I'm Peter Zemsky. I'm the Deputy Dean of the school. I'm responsible for our strategic initiatives and innovation. And it's my pleasure to be the Masters of Ceremonies for this Global Business Leaders Conference, the theme of which is Europe, What Works. And probably no better place to have such a discussion than here in a room like this. One of the reasons for this theme is that, as we all know in business, expectations matter, and they matter a lot. They matter because investment is so critical to how you create value as businesses, and expectations are often what drives that. And we're in a pivotal point where, the brick era seems to be coming to an end. If you think about brick and what that phrase meant a couple of years ago was, a huge level of excitement, growth. And yet today, the reality is always these labels, these emotions bundle good things and not so good things. Right? And when I say not brick, but when I say Brazil, Russia, even China, we're much more aware of the mixed. There's still some great things, great opportunities in those countries, but it's much more mixed. And some of the things that were hidden by the high expectations a few years ago are staring everyone in the face. And so that brings us back to Europe, where for a long time, I think the community, the business community, the press has focused a lot on what doesn't work. And there are things that needed fixing in Europe, still do. But what we are really about today is, hey, what is working? Where is it that you can build that kind of positive expectation, drive investment? Because the game today across all economies is how can you get growth engines going? And when you look at some of the assets that Europe has today, there's lots of positives to focus on, and that's what we're going to be about. Let me just a couple housekeeping things. You can take out your cell phones. You have to do two things. One, turn them off, at least the noisy part. The other thing, of course, is we live in a social age. Do feel free, once your phone is silenced, to tweet, to Instagram, whatever your favorite platform is. You're invited to participate and share what's going on with the broader community. Well, with that as an introduction, it's my pleasure to call up our first speaker, a leader of an important European business family, chairman of Barry Callebaut, but most importantly, the new chairman of the INSEAD board. Please join me in welcoming Andreas Jacobs.
Thank you, Peter. Distinguished guest, dear friends, dear alumni of INSEAD, it is wonderful to be here with you. Welcome. Special welcome, of course, is going to Cornelius Group, MBA 1977, and of course, president of the Austrian Alumni Association and president of the Austrian National Council of INSEAD. And of course, second, very warm welcome is going to our dean, Ilian Mihov, who came all the way from Singapore. Thank you, Ilian, to be with us today. We are here in a wonderful place. Many of you know the Golden Quarter. Many of you know that this is a new hotel. Many of you know that this has been a bank before. So time is changing. I think it is a fruitful place. It's good to meet in a place that has been a bank before in a Golden Quarter. Sounds great. Today we talk about Europe, what works. And if we think about Europe, of course, the first thing we have in mind, things that don't work. Most of the political things have problems in these days. First thing is, of course, when you look outside the window, there is no EU concept on the refugees. If you think about foreign policy, there is no united concept. If you think back a few months, there is no unity on how to deal with countries that can't pay their debt. So I think in politics, a lot of things don't really work. Thanks God, it's different in business. In business, we have one currency that seems to work. We have one market with tariffs and trades, free trade and free flow of goods and services. That's great. If you travel to China, they don't really remember and know what these different countries like Austria and Switzerland are. They look at Europe being one country. They think of it as the Eurozone. So they think of Europe as a commercial unity. And I think this is very much the perception of the world, and that's because Europe works in business. Of course, this didn't come overnight. It was a process of many decades, so that we today can say Europe as a business, as a market, works. I picked 1990, and I tell you later why. I think until 1990, Europe was very much a national place, a place of different national markets, where all our businesses had to be fully fledged in each and every country. What do I mean by that? Fully fledged. We had to have businesses, kind of companies in each country that were fully equipped from, sourcing to production to distribution. So if you wanted to be in Austria, you had to have a company with the whole 9 yards, with the production side, distribution, marketing, sales, everything in one company. This, of course, has changed dramatically. If I recall back in our times, at that time, Jakob Suchard, our family business, in order to be European, we were trying to buy companies in each country, like Mirabel in Austria here, or like many other companies in different, up down to Greece and Spain and Portugal. And we didn't really integrate them, so we had silos in each and every country. And that made, by the end, a European company. Today, of course, things have dramatically changed. Today, European companies, like our chocolate business, we do our sourcing globally. We have one sourcing for the whole world, based in Switzerland. We have a production platform, which is European. We never look at the borders. We look at the place where you can produce the most competitive. And then you have some sales and marketing zones, Northern Europe, Western Europe, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, that type of setup, to be a bit closer to the customer. But everything else is very European. It's one market. When you look at production, I give you an example. We produce a lot of chocolate for Cadbury, and Cadbury today, the holy cow of England, is producing the majority of their chocolate in Poland. Of course, it's not written in the newspapers, but of course it's the place that is most competitive. Unthinkable in 1990. And if you look at Swiss chocolate, and we're all so proud about Swiss chocolate, most of the Swiss chocolate actually is molded in Switzerland, but it's produced somewhere else before and shipped into Switzerland, molded, wrapped, and then they can write Swiss chocolate. So in a way, Europe went from national to European, and that works very, very well. If you go to the brands, and let's stick to chocolate, of course that has a major impact on brands. The companies leverage what they call their global brands, or let's say their European brands. And all the national brands, they're basically too small to continue. So if you now phone companies like Mondelez or any of the big chocolate companies, Nestle, they give you a long list of brands that they want to get rid of because they are Belgium national brands and they're way too small for their concept today, or they're Greek national brands, and there are probably some Austrian brands on the list as well. So in a way, the whole shift from Europe, from national to Europe, also shifted the whole group of brands that you see on the shelf in your supermarket today. So you can say it works. It's a bit sad because, the little chocolate brand that you remember when you were small maybe is gone in a few years. But on a European level, I think, we see one European market. Again, I think business is well ahead of politics. We're much behind in politics. I said earlier, in 1990, things changed. And of course, it's my personal perception. You might think it was the unification in Germany and the opening of the East, which was a dramatic change for the landscape of production and products and brands and so on. But it was also 1990 when I went to INSEAD for my MBA. And I had great teachers like Chan Kim in strategy. That's the guy who wrote these wonderful books on Blue Ocean. At that time, not yet, but today I think he sold almost 4 million copies of it. So for me, it was a great time, 1990, and maybe that's because I think then Europe changed from national to Europe. So in that sense, I think today, I hope we discuss a lot of these examples. I think you can all remember your great times at INSEAD, like I did 1990. So build on it when you discuss today what works in Europe. Let me close the circle and wish you a wonderful conference, lots of interesting conversations, and of course, lots of take-home values. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Andreas, for starting to put a lot of interesting themes on the table. It's now my pleasure to introduce our dean, one of the most highly cited macroeconomists in Europe, but today probably the leading European dean, Ilian Mihov. Please come on up. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to this conference. Andreas, thank you very much for this wonderful speech. I think that today is a very special day because we're here, but also today, 26 years ago, the world changed, at least for me, because that's when the communist regime fell in Bulgaria on the 10th of November. I think that that's very important because when we ask ourselves, why are we here in Vienna? Vienna is obviously one of the capitals of Europe, but also it's a very natural connection between the East and the West of Europe. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Today, as Andreas said, there are a lot of challenges in Europe. It's impossible to start a conversation not to talk about the refugee crisis that we observe in the continent today, how to solve this. There are many challenges throughout different European countries. But as Andreas said, there are certain things that do work, and today we'll try to identify what are the things that Europe has given to the world. Of course, for us as a business school, we also face a lot of challenges. About 4 weeks ago, I was in Belgium at a dinner, and one of the participants at the dinner said, "Why are you discussing all these things about the vision and for the school strategy? You know that in 20 years you'll be completely irrelevant. You know, business schools will be gone. So don't worry about building strategies and things like this." So actually it's a very important question. Will business schools be relevant? What will happen in Europe? Will we actually erect new borders as we were discussing last night at the dinner? I think that these are very big questions, and to answer these questions, I think that we have to go back and ask ourselves, why are we here? What is our mission? And for INSEAD, at least, and I'll try to connect it to Europe, but for INSEAD, our mission we have redefined in the last year or so to be based on the statement that business is a force for good. And I think it's a very important realization because if we don't understand this statement, it is very difficult to move forward and to have an impact. Business as a force for good is something that different people interpret in different ways. First and foremost, however, we have to remember that business creation is the only engine of economic growth in the long run. I usually cite data from macroeconomics, being a macroeconomist. In 1980, in China, there were 840 million people who lived below the extreme poverty line of $1.25 a day. Today, there are less than 150 million people. In this period of 35 years, a miracle has happened throughout the world, something that has never happened before in the history of the world. More than 1.2 billion people globally have been lifted out of poverty. And this miracle has happened not because of government aid, not because of foreign developmental aid from the World Bank or the IMF, not because of philanthropic giving, but because of one thing, and that is economic growth. And in the long run, as I said, the only engine of economic growth is business creation. So for us, as a business school for the world, our mission is to develop these future leaders, these managers, entrepreneurs, who with their knowledge, with their expertise, go back to their countries and their companies and promote growth and deliver higher economic welfare. I think it's very important to understand this because otherwise we're struggling to understand how to reduce poverty, how to reduce infant mortality, how to deal with all these bad things on a sustainable basis. And I think that if you look at all these bad things, infant mortality or poverty, they're highly correlated with income per capita. Of course, today there are many criticisms of businesses, some businesses that have created, instead of more value, have destroyed value for the society. And in some of our sessions, we'll talk about the role of leaders, of leadership, in ensuring that the goals of the society and the goals of the businesses are aligned. And I think it is very important to understand how we develop these leaders to make sure that what they do in their business, what they do with their companies, does not go against the goals of the society. And I think that we are progressing in that dimension. But later on, we'll have the conversation with Gilbert Gostin on this point. Now, INSEAD was founded in 1959, or 1957, but started in 1959, in Fontainebleau by Georges Doriot, professor at Harvard Business School, with one very noble idea. It was not just to bring management education to Europe, which, you know, INSEAD is the first business school in Europe and the first one-year MBA, but it was also to create an international school where people from France, Germany, Italy, UK, instead of fighting with each other, which they had been doing very successfully in the previous centuries, they can actually get together and build businesses together. Georges Doriot viewed INSEAD as a way to promote peace and prosperity in Europe. And in the 1950s, the process of integration, the excitement about this integration was very high. Today, INSEAD has become a global business school, but we still are true to this noble goal of promoting peace and prosperity. It is very important to state, however, that INSEAD has and will always have European roots. And the European roots for us are essential in growing and in developing our leaders. And our European roots, a key component of these European roots, is the excitement about diversity, about people coming from different countries and working together. And even if they were fighting for centuries before, they can still go ahead and work together. Today, we'll be celebrating this diversity, we'll be celebrating the success of European businesses, and we'll see what is actually not working and how we can contribute to the betterment of Europe. We actually, because of our European roots, we started a few years back an initiative on European competitiveness. So today in the afternoon, one of my colleagues, Javier Guimeno, will talk about what we have done to understand better European competitiveness. I want to close by thanking our supporters, in particular Cornelius Group, who has been a very, very strong supporter, who actually has brought us here. And you can see that this is a wonderful conference with wonderful people in the audience and speakers. So I want to thank his holding company as a main sponsor, as well as Gebruder Weiss and Lance Moser, as well as I want to thank the supporters that we have here, BlaBlaCar, Quant, Street Life, Mingle, Mac, and of course, the very powerful, the INSEAD Alumni Association of Austria. Thank you very much for supporting us here.